Welcome to the Survive to Thrive Radio Network at www.survive2thrive.net. Times are getting tough for most of us, and being prepared has never been more important. All of our hosts strive to keep you well informed so that you can achieve optimum health in all areas of your life. If you feel that the shows and website are informative, please share this information with your friends and family. If you would like to see certain topics covered, please let us know. Join us on Facebook to help spread the word. You can find the link at the bottom right of the Survive to Thrive homepage. EnerHealth Botanicals is the sole sponsor for this network, providing you not only with important information, but also with highly effective products that produce real results, such as EnerFood, coconut milk powder, liver cleanse, Cocoa Mojo, Silymarin, NutriCafe, and introducing the new 40-day, 40-night organic preparedness pail. A preparedness supply unlike any other on the market today. Supporting EnerHealth supports both this network and your own health. Without good health, we go nowhere. Go to survivetothrive.net and click on the EnerHealth banner on the top right for automatic discounts, or call them at 866-762-9238. That's 866-762-9238. You can also go to their website at www.enerfood.com. That's ENERF like Frank, OOD like dog.com. Enerfood.com. A big thank you to all of our listeners already taking the products that EnerHealth offers. We truly appreciate it. We thank you for your support and encourage you to listen often to stay informed during these crucial times.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Hawk coming to you live. It's 6/22/2017, live Thursday night show. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to tell you what. This is just getting to be real interesting, isn't it? Even those who have their normalcy bias tightly in place are starting to say, oh my, we're getting a few things around the edges here that just don't add up and are getting to be a bit too much, you see. Well, let me tell you what. Here's the deal. You got this Ramadan going on, and you got all the people praying to their moon god, okay? Now, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. They have the right to pray to that moon god in the United States, but let me tell you this. They called yesterday or last night, and tonight, their night of power, El Qadar, or whatever they call it, and in their week of power of Ramadan, because they fasted all this time, and that's giving them all the moon god power, you see. And so what happens? You have a guy comes down from Canada who's a Tunisian, but is a resident in Canada, in other words, a migrant, you see, in Canada. Hands across the water, we love all the Muslims. And all of that stuff, the guy's from Montreal, but he drives down where? To Michigan. Now, what's interesting, you see, is he's been there since the 18th. He's been down there 2-3 days. Tried to buy a firearm, they wouldn't sell it to him. Well, looks like the background check worked, didn't it? So what did he do? He gets a 12-inch hunting knife, big old fighting knife, And on the day of power, you see, he yells, Allah Akbar, and sticks it into a police officer's neck with premeditation, you see. Takes the duffel bags into the bathroom, comes back out right to where the policeman's at in the Flint, Michigan thing, and jabs him in the neck twice. The police officer, brave, and starts fighting the guy to take him down, even though he's, stuck in the neck with the thing. And then the guy who was a vendor or a food worker or something was near, and he came to help the officer, and the officer's in good condition today. And I want to thank all of the brave police officers who are now finding themselves on the front line in counter-terror operations. And meanwhile, I was at least somewhat gratified that the FBI, who slow walks every investigation, And you put these guys up there, and oh boy, they got pretty hair and pretty ties, pretty suits, and all that stuff. And they're big and strong and athletic, and, they work out at the Hut gym, and, they go to the, shoot the pistols and stuff all the time. They're real macho, but most of them, I'm sorry, are not all that bright. And if they are bright, then what they're doing is slow walking everything. It does not take much investigation to say the guy comes from Canada, is a Tunisian citizen, is a Muslim, and when he stabs the police officer is saying Allah Akbar, and now you guys are trying to figure out whether or not, well, you can state categorically that we don't think he had any outside influence or was directed by somebody from over. No, but you see, it is a Muslim terrorist. It is an extreme Muslim terrorist. They are going by what was put out, the call, or in a sense like a fatwa. They're put out the call for ISIS, put the call out to attack people everywhere. Police, anybody in cities, anywhere. Military, any kind of targets. And they said to do it, as many as possible on the night of power and the week of power. And now they're talking about also after Ramadan, they're talking about big things to come too. Hezbollah is talking to people, telling them to watch. You just wait and see what's going to happen in Syria and down all kind of places in the Middle East after Ramadan. So this thing is like game on, you see. It's like big time stuff starting to happen. And the thing that's amazing is that what's the guy's name in D.C.? I'm the special agent in charge. I'm probably the blonde-haired. I'm a little bit taller than gelled hair Bodie Bowditch from Malibu, the Malibu FBI, who put a kibosh and put the Quaish in the slow walk, and then put sensitive communication unit, sensitive intelligence unit over San Bernardino, and kept the fact that there were other people involved that the local police caught. Probably the handlers of that crew that did the shooting in San Bernardino. If you remember the police chief saying, my officers chased another person down through the yards, over fences, etc., and caught them, and then they have them in our custody. And then old FBI Malibu Bodie Bowditch says, well, we have to go and investigate all of this, and then 6 months later we'll tell you, well, there is no further information. See you later. Well, here, now the Slater, in the discussion, or his little update that he gave publicly, I guess, the briefing, and that was, I believe, the FBI special agent in charge, Slater, the top criminal special agent in charge in Washington, D.C., you see. Good-looking sport jackets and suits and ties and stuff. Really good-looking. But he's saying, this is in the attempt to assassinate Republican members of Congress who he knew were Republicans, because he asked the guy in the parking lot. He's been watching it for weeks. And he had the list in his pocket and names of a lot of Republican Congress people. And Scalise, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, is still in the hospital. He's doing a little bit better. And everybody else was shot too. He's one of these guys, Hodgkin. We talked about him. I talked to you all about, the whole deal. Join the resistance worldwide. The road to hell's paved with Republicans, He's a Bernie activist. Terminate the Republican Party. Boycott the Republican Party. Expose Republican fraud. This is all on his social media and stuff. And then he was all in that Trump is in the conspiracy with the Russians. The FBI admits that Hodgkinson vociferously raged against Republicans in online forums, had a piece of paper bearing the name of 6 members of Congress who were Republicans, was reported for doing target practice outside his home in recent months before moving to Alexandria, had mapped out a trip to the D.C. area. Yeah, he did. Took multiple photos of the baseball field, and he would later shoot up 3 days after the New York Times mentioned that the Republicans practiced baseball at the Alexandria baseball field with little security. So good old New York Times, did that. He lived out his van at the YMCA directly next door to the baseball field. Well, but yet he still had plenty of money to go drink 6, 8, 10 beers every night at a local pub and eat supper there, according to the people. And in D.C., the beers are probably $10 a piece. So he's spending $70, $80, $100 a night on supper and beer. All right. He's got money. He modified the rifle at some point to accept a detachable magazine. Well, first of all, it was an SKS. So yes, you do that, and then you can put the new, banana type detachable magazine in it. And then he also had a 9mm handgun, which they still never say which one that is. The FBI doesn't tell you which one that is. And then he had enough money to rent a storage facility to hide hundreds of rounds of ammunition, about 200 rounds, and initial rifle components, and another laptop. He hadn't asked a Republican or Democrat baseball team. He asked this of some Republicans in the parking lot leaving early before firing. Ran a Google search for information on the 2017 Republican convention hours before the shooting. Took photos of high-profile Washington locations, including the East Front Plaza of the Capitol and the Dirksen Senate office. This is coming from his camera, you see. And he know that from others reporting that the list was of 6 Republican Freedom Caucus members, including Mo Brooks, who was at the practice, you see, Steve Scalise and some others. But then the FBI believes the gunman had no concrete plan to inflict violence against Republicans. Special agent in charge Slater, he had the list of the Republicans in there. What are you doing, you dummy? You make the FBI look like a piece of crap. I know you're working for the guy that's wife took the in charge now, or the deputy took over from Comey, who took $750,000 from the Democratic Party, from Hillary Clinton's funds, gives it to your governor in Virginia, and gives it to, what's his name, who's the deputy guy running the FBI right now, A.B. whatever, okay? And yeah, you got Ray coming in. Ray's going to be a real doozy because he's also a Democrat. But you can't figure out Agent Slater, special agent in charge, head special agent in charge of criminal investigation in D.C. You can't figure out that this guy is there, that he's from, Belleville, Illinois. He's from St. Clair County, which used to be a complete Democratic machine type county run by the White Funeral Home, by a guy, his first name was Pete, and then in East St. Louis, you had Officer, the black guy ran the Black Funeral Home, and then there was mob all over it, but it was old line, Illinois, Democratic machine. Also tied into St. Louis's Democratic machine in those days. And it's an area where there's a lot of gambling, there's a lot of roadhouses, everything has card games in the back of the taverns. You got punch boards in every saloon, every kind of thing. It's a whole different. It's a river area. It's an interesting area, But it's regular Democratic. But they lost out a couple of years ago, and then hence this Hodgkinson gets X'd out. All right, as an inspector for the county. Well, I think that's because at a certain point, the Republicans took over St. Clair County. So you don't know all of that, but I mean, that's, anybody from that area could tell you all about it. And they could also tell you that George Soros is funding all of these things, and that money generally is going through, allegedly, that money's going through the Joker Todd Obama's crowd and Valerie Jarrett and the guy in Chicago who is the Democratic dirty trickster who organizes all this stuff. If you remember the guy that I forget his name, the one that just got let off today on the videotapes of the Planned Parenthood, he also did the videotapes on the Chicago and Democratic dirty trick rat, you-know-whaters. And so you, Slater, are saying the gun had no concrete plan to inflict violence on the Republicans. Does that mean he did not pour concrete and list their names out and draw the baseball diamond in a piece of concrete that would have been in the back of his van? And he said, we've not yet clarified who, if anyone, planned to target or why. Bullshit, Agent Slater. He killed Republicans. He's got Republican names. He is a Bernie Sanders. He's a Democrat, a left-wing person, but also with like a labor thug orientation, who was part of the regular Democratic stuff in St. Clair County. He believes he may have just happened upon the baseball game that morning, and the attack appeared spontaneous. How could it be spontaneous when he's been camped out at the YMCA, knowing where it's right next door to this ball field? They've been practicing there for months. That's baloney shamoni there, Agent Slater. We're unclear of the context of Hodgkinson Nova's 6 names of members of Congress. No, you're not unclear. You're slow walking it, Agent Slater. Does not believe that photographs of baseball field or other sites represented surveillance of intended targets. Oh, so you take pictures of people just because they're pretty? Or you take pictures of all this stuff and the guy has left, and you've already said in the first part of your briefing that you do know he was practicing with his rifle back in, Belleville and the outskirts there in St. Clair County, and he shot about 50 rounds with it. That means he probably had one of them big banana clips, and he, and popped it, or he had a 30 and a 20 or whatever. I don't know what he had. Because you wouldn't even tell people what the firearm was until somebody leaked it out, and they told, okay? And then you said there's no nexus to terrorism in the attempted mass assassination of a Republican leadership by a Democratic activist. Well, what do you mean there's no nexus of terrorism? Your definition of terrorism, and everyone you've ever had is somebody who, uses violence or threats of violence to, usually for a political end and to intimidate people. Isn't this when you're trying to kill a member of Congress? Isn't this attempt to intimidate other members of Congress? And say that the Antifa or the George Soros allegedly, left-wing commie, black bloc, crowd is coming, you see, for the Republicans. You see, this is all baloney. So you're the kind of guy that makes the FBI look like a piece of crap. Now, you were probably ordered, and they probably wrote all the notes out for you, so you had to read them exactly so that you wouldn't make any mistakes. And then you do have it pretty good where if they ask you a question, you say, I can't tell you, that's still part of the thing under investigation. I can't tell you, that's still part of the thing under investigation. But you can't come up to the fact that this guy isn't a left-wing terrorist trying to kill Republicans, and people in the Freedom Caucus in particular has their names on a list, premeditation, the whole 9 yards, and you can't figure that out. Well, at least your counterpoints in Michigan out of the Detroit FBI office can say, well, the guy at least did say Allah Akbar. He looks like he was self-radicalized terrorist, Muslim terrorist, you see? You sure didn't do yourself any good. And I'll tell you what, maybe Ray doesn't get approved, and maybe Trump can, appoint somebody who's really good. Yeah, maybe that sheriff down there in Florida who told people, hey, look, you may not be familiar with guns, but if you have no objection to them, you might as well get one. And if there's anybody coming to do any mass killing, any Muslims or anybody coming to do mass killings against you, the sheriff down in Florida, who had real good sense, said, by golly, you get yourself a gun, and if you have to shoot one of these people coming for you, trying to kill you or run you over with a car or truck or come at you with the knife, he says, if you have to shoot them, then shoot them plenty. In other words, shoot them a lot. I'm going to tell you what, that's just a few of the things going on. Now, I don't know if this is part of the mix, but I believe it is. You got an F-16 at Ellington Air Force Base outside of Houston, armed with, I think, sidewinders, maybe a Sparrow, I don't know. And the guy, something happens on the runway, and he ejects himself out of the plane on the runway. And that's kind of all kind of hush-hush, and they don't know exactly, and we don't know what the cause is and all of that. And then last Friday, remember on air, somebody sent me the tip about the USS Fitzgerald being colliding was at the time with this cargo ship, the ACX Crystal, okay? Army Command X-Ray Crystal, okay? Is that the PLA Army that owns the big container ship that also was carrying a lot of liquid propane gas that made a U-turn in the midstream? Well, I'll tell you, we started finding out more about that, and we found out about that I told a certain person who was a good friend of mine in the Navy that it didn't add up, and he says to me, well, such, and then here's the, this and that, so take a look, and he showed me pictures of a topside, most forward container, which had all the hazmat stickers on it, and then it had strange red tape stripes. As you go along the side of the sort of indentations of the corrugated side of the container, it would have a red dash, then it would raise up and have another little piece of red tape, then drop down, piece of red tape, drop up, piece of red tape, and they were sort of like dot, 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 dash, or, sort of like some kind of a thing. We couldn't figure that out. But what I said to him was, you know what? I'll guarantee you there's something on the U.S. ship that's wrong here, and I guarantee you that one of the officers, the officer on deck or the XO or the captain or somebody is either named Mohammed or they're called Wang Hung Lo. In other words, an Oriental Chinese type in a vernacular that many would appreciate. Well, he comes back, he says, Hawk, you're a genius. How did you know? So he shows me that a picture of the XO of the Fitzgerald, who is named Shu, American, born in Portland, Chinese descent. Real pretty guy. He's got him a master's degree and a this, that, and a PhD, I think, and all kind of stuff. Strictly by the numbers, boom, 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 boom. And he may be good as gold. But he also, the Lord was telling me that there is either a Muslim or somebody maybe tied into the Red Chinese in some way that could be partially responsible. Well, if one looks at this scenario, if the captain is asleep, which is not unusual, they've been on a mission, which they had been with the Ronnie Ray gun, I believe, up off the coast of North Korea. And the fact of the matter is, they were in calm seas, smooth as glass, no bad weather, no high peak waves, anything. Smooth, nice seas, per the weather report. And so the captain's going to take a little, catch a cat nap. Well, then you've got an officer on deck. And then you've got a bridge. People say, oh, well, everybody on the Fitzgerald was asleep. No, they're not. The bridge is manned 24 hours a day. The radio room and radar shack, which has the Aegis radar in it that can see out and manage targets in the air and on sea from maybe supposedly out to 100 miles. Okay? And that's information used in their targeting information. And then they would also have some kind of a sonar probably going too. But that radio room, the Radio Shack is always going on. What do they call it? The CIC. Then the quartermaster would be there, and then, some bosun's mates, junior chiefs and stuff, maybe a master chief, and then you'd have the officer on deck, okay? Or maybe the officer on deck was the XO that night. Not necessarily, but he could have been. So what I was thinking is somebody at the very least could have stepped on the gas or said, hard right rudder, all ahead bull, boom, 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 let's go, and hit the collision alarm, which is different than any kind of general quarters, or it's a collision alarm, and everybody would have got up out of their bunks immediately. And they could have hit that when that thing was out 1,000 yards, bearing down on them, okay? Coming at them, bearing down. And it came from quite a ways out and made the U-turn. So now who did that? Who owns that ship? Filipino crew, supposedly, out of the Philippines, but a little sketchy as to what ports it's been in and all of that. It was supposedly come from Tokyo going south or whatever. And it was carrying a lot of liquid propane gas and different hazmat stuff. All right. Well, maybe they had a whole load of that. Maybe they're going to ram it. They're going to explode that up. Well, maybe the Philippines, maybe some of those Filipinos were from Mindanao, which is a Muslim island area of the Philippines. Maybe some of them were doing Allah Akbar for Ramadan. Now, Sorshafal has said that the Russian secret police or whatever have told her, leaked through her that intelligence that the North Koreans hacked into the GPS global autopilot system, internet carried autopilot system of the container ship, caused it to do the U-turn and made it go full speed ahead for the ram. Plotted the course. But now at the same time, however, on the Fitzgerald, not only do you have the Aegis, you've got the radio man listening to radio traffic, you got all this stuff. There'd be other ships out there that could say, hey, look at that cargo ship's headed right for that destroyer. Maybe somebody's on the radio saying that over here. Maybe there's a plane up above or something like that saying it. But the radio man would be there. The radar guy's looking out. Bleep, bleep, bleep. He could see that thing with an Aegis radar system. Supposedly state of the art, right? Upgraded. And so there you got a situation that doesn't fit. Then beyond that, you'd also have guys on the bridge with binoculars. Guys out, at different stations on watch with powerful binoculars looking to make sure that in the gaps in the radar real up close, that some fishing boat or a speed boat, doesn't come up to ram them or get involved, or they don't see it. It comes out of a fog or something. But there was not a fog and all that junk that night. Even if it was a lower moon, you could still see a huge cargo ship coming from, thousands of yards away. So at some point in time, somebody should have hit the alarm. And even if the officer on deck forbid them from doing so, their job is to preserve and protect that vessel. Now, what is that vessel? It's an instrument of war. It is a USS Fitzgerald, is a destroyer with an Aegis system, missile launch system, the whole thing, the phalanx guns. A bad mamma jamma who's supposed to protect the carrier, the aircraft carrier, and the rest of the carrier group from attack from air or sea. So now this ship has been taken out of war service and protection of, I believe it was the Ronald Reagan. The Ronnie Reagan was supposed to be a truly all-out, full-boat, particle beam weapons, laser weapons, railgun weapons. It was supposed to be state-of-the-art, would have 3 reactors. One reactor was going to be strictly for the powering up of all the energy weapons. All of the energy weapons, strictly for that. Well, it's, we'll be back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. This thing is, I'm telling you, we're at war. We are at war. We're at war.
Hello there, and welcome to the bottom of the hour. This is Darren Craddock for Inner Health Botanicals, sole sponsor of the Survive to Thrive radio network. Bringing you the Hawk on Thursdays and Fridays, Nurse Amy and Dr. Bones on Tuesdays, and myself with Total Health Freedom on Mondays and Wednesdays. We are all here to keep you informed and tell you more about how to stay healthy and aware. We talk on staying well naturally, being prepared, growing your own, and more. With the right tools, foods, and information, we give you the kind of truth that will set you free. Please support our network.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hawk on Survive, number 2, Thrive.net, survivetothrive.net. And I'll tell you, now they're messing with my computer again. Oh, that's just great. Really great, boys. Every time you do it, you tell yourself, NSA. Tell yourself, Mr. NSA, boys and girls. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I was talking to you about this stuff. We're at war. So what the deal is, let me speed this thing up a little bit. If the captain's asleep, then either the XO or the officer on deck owns the ship, and it's their job to protect the vessel, the crew, and to defend against anything coming and to watch out. You got people on watch. You got the Aegis radar, which is state of the art, can see all kind of multiple targets in the air, see, everything for like maybe 100 miles out, at least 50 miles. Okay. You then got your guys watching. You got your radio man on. You probably got a sonar man on too. You got somebody overseeing them. You got the quartermaster up there. You got the whole thing, and it's all manned, you see. At the very least, as you're seeing out there, one of the guys' binoculars said, "Oh, my golly, officer on deck, why aren't you doing something?" He said, "You stand still. This is, forget that. Run up the hall and just down the hall real close to the bridge. It's where the captain's quarters be. Pound on the door and say, 'Captain, the officer of the day is screwing up. You need to change this direction of this boat. We're going to collide.'" Then you hit the collision alarm, bah, 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 and lets everybody know. Then all the other sailors that get out of their berths, out of the boats, try to quick and get to safety. But they didn't do that. They killed 7. All right. Which is quite interesting. And now I've heard that they've sworn these guys on the Fitzgerald with national security letters and all this, you can't talk about it or any of that kind of stuff. And they're kind of messing with me and giving me feedback on the radio. Probably you guys are getting a little cutout out there. Well, anyway, just to let you know, when they do that to the old Hawk is hitting the nail on the head. NSA, DIA, CIA, ONI, whoever you are who's doing that, you better understand that every time you do it, you just tail it right out saying, "By golly, old Hawk is right on the money on his information." So they put this there. Now I'm gonna go scenario. Another thing Sorsha said. Sorsha said that the North Korean special cyber squad up there, having known that this Aegis destroyer had been up there with the Ronald Reagan, all right, and just to reiterate again, the Ronald Reagan was supposed to be able almost to defend itself from anything from the air, anything with particle beam weapons, rail guns, lasers, other phalanx guns, all kind of stuff that they were going to have, EW stuff. But the budgets were all cut on that. They started cutting them back in Clinton, and then Obama really put the kibosh on it with the assistance of Pelosi, Reid, and with the assistance of Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell helped put the sequestration in the big budget deal, you see? And now we're fixing to have the Gog-Magog war and a war in Asia at the same time with the Russians, the Red Chinese, North Korean, and the Iranians. And we've got to watch the budget deficit, you know. It's all baloney caboney, you know. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. You better get prepared. You better get like the 40-day, 40-night pail of long-term, high-quality organic storage food from Enter Health Botanicals. You can go to there to enterfood.com, ENERFOOD.com, or you can call them right now. Tell them Hawk sent you. You can call them at 866-762-9238, 866-762-9238, or Enerfood, ENERFOOD.com. Tell them Hawk sent you. Now, you also need to get water purification. You got Berkey lights up there with the black Berkey filters. Get extra filters. You got clearly filtered pitchers, bottles, sports bottles, all the different stuff to purify and keep your water clean so you don't get sick from it. If you're using other long-term storage food, or like Lady J, who's, thank the Lord, is back to feeling a little better again, and she's going all across the old mountains there on the Tennessee-Carolina line. There's a new store opening up there, and some kind of price cutter store or something where the old Save-A-Lot was, not far from the Tennessee side, where Boone would be. You go across the line over into Tennessee, and old Lady J is getting people to can their goods again. Well, anyway, God bless her, because she's on fire for the Lord in her area, and she's the leader in that area. She doesn't know it necessarily, but she really is. Lord Jesus is basically telling her that she is. And everybody out there listening, in your own way, you may not know it, but you are the leader of your little area or your region or your town or your neighborhood or whatever it might be. Now, maybe your thing is logistics. Maybe you can stockpile food. Maybe you're a good shot with a rifle or a shotgun, or maybe you're somebody who can do communications, or maybe you're somebody who can drive a truck or a car or whatever it might be. But if you're on fire for the Lord Jesus and you have repented of your sins and asked him to come into your heart to be your Savior, and that he has then worked on you and is continually working on you, and you've said, Lord, how may I help you, Lord Jesus? Where can I go into the fold? Where can I go out here and be on the line for you, Lord? And then I guarantee you, he'll use you where he needs you the most. And if you're hearing this message, then believe me, there'll come a time here pretty quick where you're going to be somebody that the Lord will utilize in some good way to protect or to help or to hold the tide against some demonic type horde, or the Genesis 6 giants, the six-fingered Samuels, as I call them sometime, the fallen angels, or whatever coming at you. And it'll be a blessing, because I'm going to tell you what, the Lord doesn't pick sissies, and he doesn't always pick the little milquetoast or the goody two-shoes. It's generally somebody who's had experience out here in the thing. You just look at the history of who the Lord would hang out with, you know, as he went along on his missions and preaching, you know, and his ministering and who he ministered to. It's an incredible amount of different people that are not all the so-called best people, you know, the upper crust, Matter of fact, most of them were not. So, ladies and gentlemen, you want to keep old Hawk in the game. You want to keep old Hawk swinging the Louisville Slugger and hitting the Luciferians right in the nose, bucking their shins and hitting upside the head, standing in the gap, taking on the enemies of the Lord Jesus, striking blows against them, and at the same time trying to warn the remnant. I've never been about the general public and use old Hawk to try to convince the guy that, oh, maybe there's chemtrails or maybe there's this or, nah, got a dozen, 200 people doing that, 500 people doing that. Old Hawk is here to talk to the remnant, those who are already going to be in the end time, and he's going to tell them what's coming and how to prepare if he can, because I don't want blood on my hands. I was a watchman given a charge. Secondarily, first was to strike blows against the enemy of Jesus. Second was to warn the remnant, those with ears to hear and eyes to see, of what's coming and how to prepare and how to do all the things that you can do to the best of your ability and stand in the gap against them, you see. Put on the full armor of the Lord. You want to keep old Hawk in the game? Any assistance is most needed and wanted. Send it to Hawk, 3965 West 83rd Street, number 356, Prairie Village, Kansas, 66208. Hawk, 3965 West 83rd Street, number 356, Prairie Village, Kansas, 66208. May the Lord return it to you 10,000-fold. I'm telling you. Now, here's the deal. This ship, something happened to this ship, and I've been trying to piece together. Sorcerer Paul may have some insight, and sometimes she's totally disinfo. Sometimes she's half and half, or a quarter is true and 75%'s wrong, or, back and forth. Sometimes she might be 70, 80, 90%, 100% truth. She varies back and forth, and she meaning the person who holds the title of the Sorcerer Paul. The original one had somebody who was had a brother who was in the GRU that was killed by somebody from the KGB, from as I recall, as Brother Steve Quayle found out about. The fact is that there may have been an opportunity to hack into the command and control, the autopilot of the big container ship. That's a possibility. But we also know that the Russians have electronic warfare weapons, EW systems, that when they flew over an Arleigh Burke-class Aegis capable ship, destroyer in the Black Sea, remember the Sukhoi flew over, turned everything, all the systems off on the Donald Cook. The electronics, the Aegis, radar, the comms, and probably even the vessel, they turned off all the command and control, all the electronics on the engines. Dead duck in the water, no ability to defend itself. The Sukhoi made one pass, was on its way. There were people on the Donald Cook allegedly after that, when they got it back going up, came back to port, they put in their papers to leave the Navy if they had time enough to do it. You remember also after that, this been back, 8-10 years ago, actually maybe prior to the Donald Cook, or no, it was about the same time, maybe not 10 years ago, but just a few years back, there was a carrier, a brand new carrier that was supposed to leave the carrier group, was to set sail from Virginia, okay? From the roads, set sail from the roads and go on out. And you remember the admiral of the carrier group made a statement that his vessels were not going to go out, the carrier was not going to leave port until they upgraded some of the things to do with the Aegis system. And then it came out that they'd been on kind of a shakedown cruise, doing somewhat of a little bit of a drill with some Allied vessels, some NATO buddies out in the Atlantic. And if you recall, the scuttlebutt was that a second-rate French submarine was able to take out the entire carrier group, and that the supposedly upgraded Aegis did not work. If you go on back to 2004, when we had 3 carrier groups in the Straits of Hormuz and in the Persian Gulf, and old Hawk was saying, hey, my intel tells me, my back channel information tells me that the Iranians had 110 Super Sunburn missiles back then, 2004, and 100 exocets, and that they also had up to 40 to 42 nuclear warheads, some of which they bought on the black market, others that they were in development themselves, and others that the Russians, who they have a military treaty with, were on the scene in Iran with the other nuclear warheads, which could have been fitted on the missiles. Back as far back as 97, Brother Steve Quayle will tell you that he had printed up a story where they tested a nuclear weapon in 97. They didn't develop it, but they bought it on the black market and launched it and exploded it in a test. That was the Iranians. Well, what can they do now? Well, they can make them themselves now. They have drones that look like our drones. They were some of the people, they're scientists, probably, educated at U.S. universities, like they always were, electrical engineering, all the different stuff that they used to take. Back when I went to school even, the Persians, they like to call themselves, were all over the school system and all in the heavy in the engineering, the scientists, the, all the astrophysics, the whole bit. So, fact is that they were part of the ones who developed a large part of the Russian EW system. So that means the Iranians have it too. If the Iranians have it, then they could sell it to their buddies, the North Koreans, who they're also selling missile technology and miniaturization technology to them in exchange for what? The North Koreans are sending them material, nuclear material, to the Iranians. You see how all this works together here. And then you start looking in the Gog-Magog War, Ezekiel 38. You don't see North Korea there, but you do see Russia, you do see Persia, and all the different usual suspects, Turkey and all this stuff. But if, in fact, the Russian EW, the Chinese have probably got it too now, don't they? And they also have all the information about our stealth capabilities, our different naval vessels, all the stuff. I brought to you over the years information where, you remember when I told you that the professors from one of the Beijing type universities, one of them named Lee, one of the Lee family, Li, allegedly was coming down to Florida, and they met up with some people in Florida who were part of the Florida DHS back in the day, back 204, 205, 206, and that they introduced them to the other DHS in D.C. And then after that, the Red Chinese then came over and became cyber partners and established one of their university platforms, a remote university for them, Beijing U, in Dayton, Ohio. And then they were hired as cybersecurity partners against the bad cybersecurity, you see, by the U.S. government. And then what they wanted to do, which is what they've already been doing, is they wanted their children to go to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. They wanted them to go to the Coast Guard Academy. And by golly, they did. They sent a lot of young people there. Now they send them to all kind of other different universities. I was just talking to old Doc Jack down there in Charlotte, who may be involved with a certain teaching in university. And he said that the Red Chinese people come in all the time. And they can afford to go to school wherever he teaches. And they're not there for a whistling Dixie. You know what I'm saying? They ain't there for the special barbecue. They ain't there to see the stock car races. Charlotte Motor Speedway, they're there for, by golly, Mom and Daddy, we got money and we work for the government. And then not only that, but they'll buy me a house here to go while I go to school. And then maybe we'll go over to the small town over here and buy the gas station, the grocery store, and the pharmacy. They're moving in. We're at war. You need to govern yourself accordingly, and it should be a governance in terms of preparation and preparing to be there. But yet we got all this crud with the Muslim people. We've got other things like, we had the Ellington, the aircraft. Guy has to, pop the chute on the runway. But then the other day, here's another one, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Tanker truck overturned in Hendersonville, causing corrosive sulfuric acid and diesel fuel to leak into the roadway Tuesday night. 600 gallons of acid spilled from the tanker, which was carrying 3,100 gallons at the time of the spill. They had to evacuate businesses on Rockland Road near Free Hill Road and close the area to drivers. And then here's the deal. They had to close up the Speedway gas station and the in-town suites. I know exactly where that's at, where that Speedway's at. I bought gas there in years past. Near my business may not be able to open Wednesday morning due to the ongoing cleanup and proximity to the spill. Now here's the deal that they don't tell you about, it doesn't emphasize. The mayor explained that the tanker truck was turning into a water treatment plant when it overturned. But the water's safe and the driver was not injured. While the leak has been contained, work to clear the hazardous material can begin, you see. Tanker was towed away and it's all clear at 4:30 a.m. But see, you don't want sulfuric acid to go into the water table, all right, because it reacts violently with water and it's corrosive to metals. They were having to dig up all the soil around the area where the spill is, dig way down so that they can catch it before it goes on down into the groundwater. Because then you're going to start having explosions and stuff, all right? So what was a big tank of sulfuric acid turning into the water treatment plant for? You see, that's another one of those unknown causes. We've also had some other power outages as well, too. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, but I've been trying to tell you about it. And then meanwhile, the FBI, they can't even figure out that this guy who had a list of all the Republicans is not a hired gun for the lefty, probably allegedly Soros-paid lefty demo tricksters, all right, of the Bernie crowd and stuff, who all the people were paid to do it. And then apparently there was some sort of a thing. I know there was a Hal Turner story about how off the coast of Tartus, which if you remember in 2004, old Hawk told you that the next war would probably be the Gog-Magog war starting in Syria. And I gave you back then the facts that the Russians had a base in Tartus and Latakia, and they needed the naval base to have a warm water port outside of the Bosphorus, outside of the Black Sea, into the Mediterranean, so they could be players in the Med and in the Middle East, you see. Well, that was true. And I also said back then, you got to get these carrier groups, because back then the Aegis system could not handle the number of targets that were going to be sent at it. The Russians also had Skval torpedoes that go supersonic underwater. None of the carrier groups could handle those. Skval, S-K-V-A-A-L, I believe, or something like that. Skval torpedoes. Supersonic under the water torpedoes. Can't really defend against them necessarily. The Iranians had those. So I yelled at the top of my lungs back then to get those carrier groups out of the Persian Gulf and particularly out of the Straits of Hormuz. And what's interesting is that we had another Aegis-type destroyer or cruiser or something collide with the U.S. submarine in the Straits of Hormuz, and that is in the thing that in the source you follow, whatdoesitmean.com, whatdoesitmean.com. You can go look at it. And then in there, she goes on to a YouTube site where somebody very good and went right down off the Navy site and told you all the different stuff. And it matches up with exactly what I was telling people Friday night and talking with other people who were in the Navy. I wasn't. And telling them what the story was. But we're going to have a problem here if they can turn off our Aegis cruisers or Aegis destroyers, or turn off the air traffic control in L.A. or, in England or wherever it might be. But anyway, apparently there might have been some drone. I don't necessarily think it was an EQ-4, but some explosion may have taken place off of TARDIS in the air, so they may have used an one of their S-300 systems. But I maintain that the Russians have S-400s down there, not just the S-300s, which gives them 300 miles out on a 300, 400 miles out on a 400. They can manage and look at up to, I believe, thousands of targets out 300 or 400 miles, watch them, gauge whether they're coming in, if they're dangers, immediate dangers, and then instantaneously target either missiles, guns, or whatever to fire upon those incoming targets and then knock them out of the sky. So if there was a drone, a U.S. or Israeli or whoever's drone it was, and it doesn't have to be the big EQ-4, which would not necessarily be what would be going through there, was a little too close to the Russian base in TARDIS, and they may have taken it out. At the same time, we have an Air Force drone crashes in a remote area near Mount Whitney, okay? Not too long ago. There's all kind of anomalies. And then I see, just as I've said in the past, and we've talked about the strong possibility that I think that the way they're going to hit the United States is to take it out with an EMP, and that would either be the Russians or the Red Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, or they could also take out the power grid, because the EMP would take it out, and exploding, nuclear weapon, a couple of them over the top of the center of the United States. And then I also told you how the Norks have the satellites, okay, that are on a weird kind of orbit that cross right over the center of the U.S. And they can drop them down. That's been discussed now in Congress and on television. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're strong. And you know why you're strong? Your week of power is all the time. Your day of power is every day that you're with the Lord Jesus. So even though the moon god people are praying for their day of power and they have to go kill somebody, assassinate somebody, or try to cut their head off with a big knife, or to shoot them, or to do something to them, or to blow them up in the central Brussels thing. There's power in the blood of Jesus. Don't you ever forget it. Don't go into their Luciferian night without a fight. Understand, you need to prepare in earnest. You might have an EMP or an outright attack. Mighty men and women of valor, if you can use high technology, put the fire down on the roots. I love I think that's our society out in the future. The Lord Jesus protect you against some evil and may give you the strength to stand up like strong Americans.